you are all here with us. And, you know, to tell you the truth, we've been really looking forward to this day because it's been actually a lot of work. It's the first time, of course, that Brookline is able to celebrate an official Brookline AAPI Heritage Day. So, on behalf of the Brookline Asian American Family Network, the town of Brookline, the public schools of Brookline, as well as the public library of Brookline, I extend to you a most hearty welcome. My name is Shulan Chang, and I'm a member of the steering committee of the Brookline Asian American Family Network. Now, I was told that there were 300 reservations, but I'm hoping that people are going to stream in. I prepared my remarks this morning, and I wanted to ask a few questions. And I was expecting like roaring answers coming back at me. But, so you're all going to have to be really loud, okay, when I ask you these questions. So I'm curious. Say yes if you like Asian food.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, raise your hand if you have one Asian friend or Asian American. How about many Asian friends? Awesome. So clap your hands now if you can think of an Asian American movie that you really like. Okay, that's good. Now, say yes if you like books and stories. Great. So today, I want you to imagine that we're sitting around in a circle, actually, and opening a storybook. More like an anthology, where characters are actually going to come out alive and reveal themselves. Unlike most books, though, art starts with an acknowledgement. The respect and profound gratitude that we owe to those that came before us. Way too many of our Asian and Asian American ancestors experienced two things in common, and it's time we collectively said, stop. 12,000 came from China about 160 years ago. They were grossly underpaid, did backbreaking work, blasting dynamite through granite, and 1,200 of them actually died doing this work. They helped build the first transcontinental railway connecting the east and west coasts, bringing so much promise of progress. So then, when you look at that photo on your left, in that historic photo taken on Promontory on Golden Spike's Celebration Day, why don't we see any Chinese? You know, they were 80% of the workforce. The second photo on your right shows the ethnic Japanese Americans from 80 years ago. 120,000 of them, mostly American citizens, were rounded up, their personal property confiscated, their constitutional rights stripped, and freighted away to 10 internment camps in distant and desolate places. There, they didn't have a story, and they didn't have a name. Instead, they and their families were given a 5-digit number to wear on a string around their necks. They were told that they were there for their protection. Really? So why are the guns in the guard towers pointing inwards and not out? We can fill way too many pages with these stories of erasure and othering. So what is our pledge on this very first Brookline AAPI Heritage Day? To honor and lift up all stories by and about AAPI, the untold, the retold, the newly told, and the yet to be told. Now, let's talk about numbers, because we have to start somewhere. Last August, the Brookline Asian American Family Network ran a GoFundMe campaign, and we raised $10,850 from some over 100 very generous donors. I know that some of you here contributed. Thank you very much. Using 60% of that, we purchased almost 600 books now by and about AAPI, written by almost 300 authors, and they are now available in the Brookline High School Library. We had a balance of $4,540, which we entrusted to the librarians, and with that, they will purchase future books. Then we realized, what about the little kids, the kids in BAAFN and the kids in the 8 elementary schools? So we went to the Brookline Community Foundation. If you are here, we're very, very grateful. Rob, thank you so much for being our reviewer. And we applied for a $6,000 grant. Now, as you know, the demand for these grants, these grant dollars, are quite intense. So we didn't put too much hope in it, but in the end we got the full amount that we asked for. And we got the $6,000, and with that we went shopping, right? Alicia, we like to do that? We went shopping and we purchased almost 400 books, which are now, since March, sitting in the libraries and the classrooms of BAAFN and the 8 elementary schools. This is actually a snapshot of all of the authors that we have now in the library in Brookline High School. Then, this is a snapshot of half the books that we have in the elementary schools. And this one is the remaining 50%. And we are so happy that they're there. And the news that we get from the librarians, because they're saying that kids want to do book clubs, discussions, etc. It feels really, really good that these books are making the community of these students coming alive. Now, so I will start with chapter 1. Who's our special guest? I met Vincent Poe online. No, not through a dating app. Okay, you can see he's about my grandson's age. But on the first page of the New York Times last November, I was totally charmed by his story, so much so that I decided to write to him. Now, that's the first time I've ever done that. I hit the send button, and of course, a little bit nervous, I basically told myself, oh, he's not going to write back, right? Less than 24 hours later, I received the kindest, loveliest letter, just oozing with thoughtfulness. Vincent is actually in New Zealand. He wanted to be here so much with us, so we bent over backwards, and we thought, we have to bring him here. And it was thanks to Kathy Tallman that we were able to do this, because in our meeting she said, oh, we'll just Skype him in, I said, can you do that? So, can we get Vincent in? He's in New Zealand. His flight delayed by 9 hours, so he has had barely any sleep. Thank you, Tom. Hi, Vincent. Can you see us?
Hey.
Good to go?
Hello.
Hi, Vincent.
Hey.
Hey. Oh, there's a little bit of a lag, but let me read a little tiny introduction of you, okay? Before you start. Okay. Vincent has lived many versions of the Asian American dream. Now, like I said, he's 28 years old. So that sounds like an exaggeration, but it's true. He grew up with a strong sense of curiosity, excelled in math and the sciences, no surprise, plays the violin and the viola, and went to Princeton for engineering. In the eyes of my generation, a generation of immigrants, he had cracked the proverbial code of the better life. But Vincent also managed to crack into our younger generation's Asian American dream. To be able to support yourself doing something you're truly passionate about. First through photography, and then through storytelling. Vincent is going to take us through his journey of finding fulfillment and motivation through connecting with others. It's all yours, Vincent.
Thanks for coming to listen today, and thanks Shulong for inviting me to speak and for such a kind introduction. I wish I could be there today to join you all in person, but I hope that this can come close. A little over 3 years ago now, I quit my engineering job to start a photojournalism project to listen to and photograph and share the stories of people all around the US and all around the world. My idea was simple, if admittedly a bit unique. I would offer to photograph a couple's wedding for free, and in exchange, they'd host me in their homes the 10 or so days before their wedding and share their life stories with me. I've since lived with, photographed, and written about 45 couples of all different kinds of backgrounds and identities. All the portraits you're seeing now are of these couples. No matter someone's ethnicity, their religion, politics, geography, or any other factor that we usually imagine divides people, love and weddings can cross all of them. A couple I once stayed with likened me to a modern-day bard, someone who collects and shares stories in the homes of people all around the world. For the next few minutes, this big screen is my home, and so I'd like to share a few stories with you. 1. Cradle. My story, like all of our stories, begins with those who came before me. All 4 of my grandparents were born in mainland China in the 1910s and 20s. They survived the brutal years of Japanese occupation and the Chinese Civil War, and in the late 1940s, they fled to Taiwan. Their lives were uncertain by every measure, and yet in that uncertainty, like many people, they had children, who they hoped would grow up in a kinder and more tolerant world. My mother, the youngest of 5 siblings, was at the end of her parents' patience and energy to raise more children. She was fiery and independent, and she was also athletic, one of her class's fastest runners. Plenty of boys chased after her, and she usually sped past them. My father was an occasional troublemaker, but more often, he was a studious child. He was the only son to his parents, and given plenty of attention as a result. He was adored by his mother, and he adored his mother. The 2 of them met in middle school, dated in college, and married soon after my father finished medical school. Their wedding was held at a church in Taipei with 200 guests. A few years after that, they immigrated to America, so my father could start a graduate degree. They traveled to all 4 corners of the US, and towards the end of my father's time as a grad student, I was born, in Nashville, Tennessee, in the spring of 1996. In each of my parents, my grandparents, my ancestors' stories are thousands upon thousands more. A fractal of what-ifs and could-have-beens, but most importantly, choices. All led to very different lives and very different worlds. And understanding that is grounding, I think, because it reminds me that my own life and my own choices also form these fractals. 2. Query. Some of my earliest memories with my parents are of road trips we took to science museums across the country, where we wandered through exhibition halls about plate tectonics and magnetism and plant biology and outer space. My mom and dad nudged me towards appreciating science and nature, and though they never conditioned their love on me doing well in school or wanting a specific career, I was happy, for a time, to absorb their wisdom as my own. My vision of success closely lined up with theirs. I played piano and violin, the latter far better, did well in school, and I kept a lot of other studious, wholesome friends. College, I was led to believe, would validate and build upon all these ideals. It'd curb any self-doubts I might have, though it started as the opposite, really. My classmates were athletic and academic Olympians. They were world-class dancers, and musicians, and actors, and I was just a kid from Oklahoma. And where was that again? I wanted to talk to everyone, to hear their stories, ask so many questions. I never knew if others wanted to do the same in return. I spent the summer after my first year of college back with my parents. In my self-doubt and worry, I found hobbies that made me happy again for the sake of happiness, not for the sake of achievement or expecting it to become something more. I asked my mom to teach me to cook some traditional Taiwanese dishes. My dad gave me an old guitar to start strumming and plucking. And using years of stashed red envelope money, I bought myself my first camera. My first pictures were of my parents mostly, and also flowers and bikes, all the usual first subjects. But when I returned to school, I found that the curiosity I had for everyone suddenly had a place to go, just because I had a camera and I knew how to use it. Everyone, all the athletes, the dancers, the academics, they needed nice photos of themselves at some point. And with my camera, I had reason to spend time with all of them, to ask them how and why they cared about what they did. I probably took over 300,000 photos of 5,000 of my peers in those years. I pulled all-nighters not to finish problem sets for my differential equations class, but to finish editing photos, so a dance group could use them as last-minute publicity for the show. I said yes to everyone who asked if I would take their portrait. And as a senior, I felt like a freshman, just as curious about my peers' stories as during my first days of school. 3. Itinerant. I studied electrical engineering in college, and I enjoyed it enough to find my first job in it. I knew within a few months of starting, though, that I did not enjoy it enough to continue for 40 years, a whole career. There's a lot of romance in pursuing passions or starting something new, but the reality is more often dim and lonely. It often feels like your work has no audience, or that you're shouting into a void. I didn't take leaving my job lightly. But better that, I thought, than see the opportunity, have the privilege, feel the confidence to make it work, and then to try, than to wonder, what if, for the rest of my life. I wrote a 20-page plan to share with my friends, mentors, and most importantly, my parents. They read the plan and were definitely a bit worried about how the future they'd imagined for me was now going to change so much. But they were supportive. They too had made huge choices in life that changed the arc of their future, and they'd seen those choices often turn into beautiful blooms. The most important thing they gave me was their steadfast love and a safety in knowing that whatever happened, I could always return to their home and to their arms. With the tailwinds of their support and some boldness in my own 23-year-old naivety, I started traveling. I drove 40,000 miles, took over 100 flights, lived with 50 couples. On the surface, our lives were more often different than similar, but because of their stories, and because of my camera and curiosity, the world brought us together. 4. Anthology. I'm sometimes not sure what to call myself, but if I had a job title, the most accurate would probably be professional third wheel. I'm at times a bystander, a participant, a journalist, a photographer. Mostly, I try to be a friend, who just so happens to own a camera and who is intensely curious about other people's lives and how they see the world. The stories I've shared so far have largely been my own, which is new to me because most of the time I'm sharing other people's stories. So here are a few. Kevin and Pam, who love with physical and mental disability in the promise and peril of rural Alaska. Fatima and Ibrahim, a young Muslim couple whose faith steers their lives in New York City and their love for one another. Ellen and Vicky, who were 6 weeks away from their wedding when Vicky's son suddenly passed away, and who had to ask what planning the happiest day of their lives meant when it so closely trailed the saddest. And Brandon and Vicencio, who met online by chance across the Atlantic Ocean, and who are now raising their 4-year-old daughter, Samari, in Belgium. I lived alongside all these people. I met their families, immersed myself in their communities. I feel lucky to call them friends. In Alaska, I helped Kevin and Pam chop trees so they could get electricity. We lay floor in their shipping container home. They have a shipping container home. We ate food kept in coolers, cooked on camp stoves under a tarp strung into nearby trees. We flew together, with their service dogs from Alaska to the wedding in upstate New York, where we danced together with friends and family, and of course, their dogs. In New York, I watched Fatima and Ibrahim pray. We wandered through quiet and peaceful woods, and they shared about how grateful they were for Allah and all the blessings He'd given them. I photographed inside a mosque for the first time. Their vows carried a weight that I've rarely felt since. With Ellen and Vicky, I lived among grief, plain and miserable and all-consuming grief. In the absence of knowing what to say, I often probably said too much or said too little. I photographed more tears on their wedding day for more reasons than on any other day in my life. And I played with Samari, Brandon and Vicentia's 4-year-old daughter. I imagined with her parents what she'd be like as a child, then a teenager and an adult, how she would remember the moments we all shared, if she'd remember them at all. Wish that she could see, really see, and appreciate just how much her parents had given her. 5. Fractals. Most of the couples I live with don't share much in common. Their religions are different, they grew up with or without money, they're close with their families, or they're completely estranged from them. But they're unified in one way. They made a choice to be with their partner, to strive to build life in their mind's image. That choice was easier for some than others, made more quickly or slowly, but made nonetheless. If there's anything I've learned from living with 50 couples, it's that life refuses to be put on rails. My own family story, both their traumas and their joys, proves that, as does that of everyone I've met.
Recording
as
in
does,
progress.
I imagine, all of yours. Ask anyone around you about their story, whether your closest friends or complete strangers, and you'll find a fractal of choices. Each choice revealing countless more, each of those revealing more, and so on and so on. Extraordinary lives are really just extraordinary stories, shaped by extraordinary choices. My grandparents fleeing to Taiwan was a choice that created a fractal that led to my parents being born. My parents choosing each other led to them immigrating to the US. Being here led to me. Quitting my job led to, among other things, all these photos you see now. And hopefully, someday, somehow, those will all lead to a partner and children of my own. All of which is to say, it's worth it to choose, to make decisions about your life, especially when they're hard. I'm the product of hard decisions my ancestors made. I'm shaped by them in good ways and bad. And understanding that means understanding that I, too, have that power to shape my life, the lives of those around me, and the lives of those who will come after me, and to do something beautiful with that privilege. Thanks for listening. I obviously can't meet up with anyone at the end of the event, but if you'd like to talk more or just say hi, I'd love that. Just send me an email at hello@vincentpoe.com. Thanks again.
Vincent, I don't know whether you can hear, but you have grand applause. I hope you heard it. Thank you so much. I'm going to catch up with you after this. Have a great time in New Zealand and experience all the love over there, okay? Thank you. Thank you, Vincent.
Have a great event.
Hello, everybody. My name is Giles Lee. I'm a steering committee member of BAAFN. Thank you for being here. What a great presentation from Vincent, right? Thank you so much, Vincent. So it is my honor today to present the winners of the BAAFN essay contest. We had an incredible group of applicants, and our esteemed panel of judges really spent hours reading and rereading these essays, and ultimately unanimously agreed that these 5 exceptional essays were this year's winners. So I'm pleased and privileged, really, to share the stage with these young leaders. I'm very proud and glad that my kids are growing up in a Brookline that has role models like you. This year, we're going to start with, we're going to switch the order a little bit, and we're going to start with the presentation of this year's Creativity Award. John Watson is a product of Driscoll School, a junior at Brookline High, where he is captain of the cross-country team, as well as an active member as an actor and director of the Brookline High School Drama Society. In addition, John is a part of the AAPI steering committee, as well as a teacher's assistant with the Calculus Project, a grassroots initiative to close the achievement gap in math for students of color and low-income students. In the process of writing this essay, John had the opportunity to reflect on his own identity and the shared experiences and memories of his family members, including the hard ones. He would like to dedicate this award to his mom and his popo. So please welcome John Watson.
Thank you, Giles. So my essay is called Walking on Shattered Glass. Rice, soup, noodles, fish, chicken, lapchang, bok choy, salted eel, cornstarch to thicken a broth, garlic and ginger for flavor, all of it served on one styrofoam plate. Don't forget to use chopsticks, make slurping sounds while you eat, and most importantly, let Papua scoop you seconds, thirds, fourths, and fifths until your stomach feels like bursting open. We eat in her dimly lit kitchen with an oven filled with pots. She has shelves filled with plants, used plastic bags, vitamins, and more clutter. She has an ancient VCR television, always playing an old Chinese drama, and a small wooden table. Around the table are chairs with quirky back supports, and on top there are newspapers, metal jars, and paper towels for napkins. There is so much dullness in this kitchen, yet so much life and history and mystery too. I've always wanted to ask Papua about everything she faced before she came to America. What was her life that she left in China? But I've never asked because she speaks too little English, I don't speak her dialect, and she doesn't like talking about her past. My mother has shared the limited knowledge about it that she has, but it is not enough to suffice. There is still so much I don't know about my grandmother and our family's history. There is so much pain, so much suffering, and surely so much joy too, that I will never know about. I do know that for various reasons, one of them being the fact that she grew up in a family torn apart by political upheaval, Papua never received the kind of love that a child deserves from her parents, and that in turn, she didn't have enough love to give my mother. That's why, a few years ago while I was alone eating dinner with her, I was so shocked to hear her say, "John, I love you." The weight of her love crushed me on the inside. It was 1,000 times greater than anyone else's, because she would have never been able to say that to her own kids or her own mother. So helplessly, I told her that I loved her too. Now I stand in her kitchen again, but this time the entire family is here. In the other room, my younger cousins are watching Paw Patrol and playing on their Nintendo Switches, while my older cousins watch a basketball game, and my siblings sit there on their phones. My younger cousins won't eat the Chinese food that my aunt ordered, and instead they talk about how there's no In-N-Out franchise in Boston. Here in the kitchen, I can see my mother trying her best to make conversation with one of her brothers, while one of my aunts apologizes to me for something that happened weeks ago. Papua sits in the corner, picking at her squab. It seems like none of us know how to talk to each other or how to love each other in the ways we long for. It's easy to blame the older generations for their flaws as parents and aunts and uncles and grandparents, or to blame my cousins for turning their heads from parts of the culture, but I've learned that that's just part of the legacy of Chinese immigration. Brokenness. We are all just as scared as the teenager Papua was when she boarded a plane to the US. And still, I will never stop loving my family, even if it hurts just the same as walking on shattered glass. Thank you.
Thank you so much, John. Okay, so great, here we go. Next is the Emerging Writer Award. Lila Yoon, once of the Runkle School, now a senior at Brookline High, soon to be a student at Cooper Union, where they will study chemical engineering. Also, attending Cooper Union will make them neighbors with their grandparents who live in Manhattan, Chinatown. They are also a participant in Make Us Visible Massachusetts, which advocates for AAPI curriculum in schools. And as a painter, they believe art is a helpful way to communicate, to learn, and to explore culture. Lila has actually entered the BAAFN essay contest every year that they were eligible, and I thought it was really lovely in my conversation with them how they said they kind of think of it as a way to mark the years over time, thinking back and reflecting on where they were in their life. They would like to dedicate this one to their grandparents, so please, everyone, welcome Lila Yoon.
Hi, thank you. My essay is titled Joy is Resistance. I find that home exists on either coast. My childhood memories sit hazily in the back of my mind, a pale orange couch and a smooth granite countertop, the sizzle of a frying pan and dumplings full of California fresh vegetables, the smell of wonton noodles permeating a tiny New York living room as I fall asleep next to my brother. Despite being told in 3rd grade that the lunch my mom packed for me in school smelled, despite having eyes pulled back and nonsense chanted at me throughout middle school, I was confident in my Asian American identity as a child. My happiest memories are so deeply rooted in my culture that to deny the validity of my heritage was to deny myself joy. As the majority of this country begins to consider large concepts such as polarizing names like critical race theory and affirmative action, there have been more dissidents to cultural pride, the men online who laugh at women of color and ask why everything has to be about race these days, the older white Americans who say that back in their day they didn't see color, the teenage girls who tell me that it's cultural appreciation and that they should be able to wear a cheapao if they want. This and the growing self-consciousness that is inevitable for most teenagers forced me to confront a growing fear of mine. Was I too Asian? For example, when I first listened to a K-pop song, I felt joyful, but ashamed. Perhaps it was too much to be both Asian and to listen to Asian music. Was I becoming a caricature? By participating in so many aspects of my culture, was I to blame for how Asians are viewed in this country? Almost as soon as these thoughts began to fester, we were plunged into the pandemic. I stayed inside and did my homework diligently, losing myself in YouTube videos for months past and hoping desperately that I would wake up one day and everything would be fine. The news reports on AAPI hate crimes would stop, the then president wouldn't call COVID the China virus, the world would exist outside my computer screen. But that didn't happen for years. All I remember thinking about during the first 2 years of the pandemic was my grandparents and the homes I had on either coast. I read the news, checked Twitter, watched the TikToks my friends sent me, and woke up every day with the immense horror of how sickeningly possible it was for my grandparents to be killed that day for being Asian. I was haunted by the image of their heads smashed into the pavement in front of Daiwong, the restaurant we bought roast pork and rice from. My mental health spiraled, even if I didn't acknowledge it. I forgot about my internal struggle with my identity, focused instead on the survival of my loved ones. When we came out of the pandemic and left survival mode, I once again faced the question of whether or not I was too Asian, but with a new perspective on the world. After years of fearing for my life and the lives of my loved ones, tired of questioning my place in Brookline and in America, I knew that to celebrate being Asian American was an act of beautiful resistance. I refused to deny myself the joy that is rooted in my heritage and in my memories, and I allow my pride to spread so wide as to reach the home that exists on either coast. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lila. This year's Content Award winner, Tina Yi-Tian Lee, a junior at BHS and a graduate of Pierce School, is co-president of APAC, as well as in student government and speech and debate. She also works an internship at Brigham and Women's Hospital, examining racial equity in healthcare. In the free time that I'm sure she has none of, she enjoys reading and baking. It was a real-life discussion with her parents on Lunar New Year's Day that inspired her to immediately go to her room and write this essay. And she would like to dedicate this award to her parents, who have been through a lot together, especially over the past few years. Without them, she says, she would not be the person she is today. So everyone, please welcome Tina Lee.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for being here. I'm Tina Lee, and this is my story, Why Do I Hate Wearing Red Clothes? Yeah, quite ironic, isn't it? Red used to be my favorite color, symbolizing joy, prosperity, and power. I loved wearing red clothes, from traditional red cheaphouse to scarlet hand-woven hats. But how did they slowly get piled onto the depths of my closet, never to be worn again? What changed, making me hate or even fear wearing red clothes? The short answer is a one-way ticket to the United States. Now let me share with you the long one. Growing up in China, my parents frequently glorified the United States as a lighthouse of democracy and opportunity. However, the idea of leaving my home country did not come real until a final meeting with the immigration officer on my 12th birthday and the red stamp on my passport, granting my parent and me the permission to immigrate here. The following 6 months was a blur. I dropped out of my Chinese school, my parents quit their job, we sold our house that I grew up in, and we packed our entire life into 13 suitcases. Then, on March 8, 2018, after an 18-hour flight, I landed at Boston Logan Airport on a snowy winter night. A few days after I arrived in Brookline, I started 6th grade at Pierce. Despite my inability to communicate in English, I slowly observed my fellow classmates and took in everything with wonder. Just by my first impression, I was overwhelmed by how different I felt compared to them. They were loud, confident, and American, while I was quiet, scared, and Chinese. But at that time, I couldn't pinpoint what exactly made me feel that way. I only saw that those girls were wearing stylish black tank tops, while I was wearing the ugly red sweater that my grandma made. Even before I understood the social norms and the beauty standard of this new place, I knew that red made me different, and I was ashamed because of it. For the next few years, I envied those American girls and was desperate to be like them, which to the 12-year-old at that time meant changing my appearance, especially by not wearing red. I tried wearing tank top, putting on mascaras, being with all those popular girls, and shoving my red clothes onto the bottom of my closet. Yet despite how hard I tried, I never really fit in. To them, I was always the shy Asian girl who couldn't speak English right. Not knowing anyone who could relate to me, I felt alone, invisible, and powerless. Then one day in 6th grade, we were learning about immigration during our history class, and my teacher at that time, Ms. Latin, pulled me aside after class to ask about my story. I could have brushed it off like I normally would, but perhaps because of her kind smile, I told her everything, from the moment I knew my life would change forever to the final goodbye I had with my grandparents. After hearing my story, Ms. Latin said with tears dancing in her eyes "That's so powerful, Tina. I'm so proud of you." I nodded, trying to hold back my tears. At that moment, I realized that I had power in my own story. I did not have to pretend to be like my white American classmates, because I was not. My Asian immigrant identity, from my red clothes to my Chinese accent, was precisely what made me me, and I should not feel the need to hide it away. Ever since then, I began wearing more red clothes and joined the Asian Pacific American Club at my school. Slowly, I met more people who had similar experiences as me. I saw so many of them embracing their Asian and Asian American identity in such an unapologetic and liberating way. I realized that I'm not alone. I'm not the only one who once feared wearing red clothes. and I didn't have to anymore. I wish I could say embracing my identity as an Asian American immigrant was a linear path, but sometimes the eternal battle of wearing red clothes or not still make me feel like my two identities are fighting for attention. But more than anything, I often remind myself how proud I am to be both Chinese and American. My Chinese upbringing and background taught me to be hardworking, grateful, and kind, while my American immigrant experience taught me to be confident, bold, and fight for my voices to be heard. These two identities are never the polar opposites like I thought. Instead, they match perfectly together, like my red G-Pow and the white Converse, into me, the person I am today. Thank you.
Now the winner of this year's BAAFN Award. The winners of this year's BAAFN Award. Kalina Huang Brookfield is a junior at Brookline High and is a proud graduate of Lawrence School. She is a committed environmentalist and active in the climate change movement. She currently works as a research science and communications assistant at the Museum of Science. She shares this award with AAPI and everyone who worked so hard to make Lunar New Year a Brookline holiday. She is also a member of the BHS rowing team, and because of that is unable to join us today because the team is competing in a race at this very moment. So instead, Kalina's essay will be read by her favorite teacher of all time, her third grade teacher, Miss Xu. So please welcome Alicia Xu reading on behalf of Kalina Huang Brookfield.
Rediscovered Memories by Kalina Huang Brookfield. Sitting in a squeaky red fabric chair in the front row of the auditorium, I waited impatiently for the never-ending line of students to trickle in. The school had advertised the event as a Lunar New Year celebration, a performance showcasing all of the diverse Asian cultures present at Brookline High. All I knew was that it would last an entire hour and that it took place during the very last block before we were released for February break. The lights dimmed and the crowd quieted. A few dozen students stood on stage, accompanied by an array of string instruments holding their bows at the ready. Arms hovered shakily, waiting for a signal. The room seemed to be holding its breath. With the sweep of an arm, the orchestra descended into a traditional Asian folk song that I had heard over and over again growing up. And suddenly, memories I had long forgotten of my earliest years came flooding back. My ama massaging my feet with cold cream to get rid of my fever, the pressure of her fingers digging into my soles, bringing me to tears, but the look on her face telling me that I dared not cry. My tongue burnt on zhou as I ate on a plastic stool in front of a fan, battling the sweltering humidity of a summer in Taipei. My ayi cradling my face with her permanently cool-to-the-touch hands, her praises of what a guai haizi I was, accompanied by the clinking of jade bracelets worn on both arms. Before I knew it, the folk song was over, and as the audience applauded, I was left with a feeling of incredible longing for those years when I still spent my summers in Taiwan, still lived in Flushing Chinatown of Queens, New York. Years before I'd quit my Chinese Sunday school and the Kung Fu classes and Chinese holiday parties that came with it. Years when I'd had no reason to feel insecure about my American accent when speaking Mandarin, and could speak to my relatives in complete sentences. It was a wave of indescribable nostalgia for a culture that I hadn't even known I had lost. Each of the following acts brought with them an onslaught of rediscovered moments buried deep within my past. The boy on stage launched his yo-yo 5 feet into the air, hypnotizing me in the same way that the toy vendors of the Shilin night market would, every night with their carts full of flashing colored lights. A girl playing guzheng threw me into a memory of my cousins taking turns on the piano, fingers moving across keys as if they had been born with the sole purpose of being pianists. As 2 students on stage were in the middle of a karate routine, I was snapped out of my memories by the baffled laughter of someone in the audience behind me. My initial confusion turned into anger as I realized that they were scoffing at the martial arts in front of them. The beauty of the art form was lost on them, so they picked it apart and discarded it as something absurd. But they didn't know the amount of precision each step of the routine in front of them required. They had never been 7-year-olds peeking around the corner to watch in awe as the big kids practiced roundhouse kicks so high that they were practically flying, spinning around with the deadly strength of a hurricane. And so the rage melted into a feeling of sadness for myself and for the laughing people behind me. I was losing my place in this stunning, unique culture with every year that passed. But they might never get to experience the magnificent Asian cultures, might never understand the beauty of a martial arts routine. As the hour came to a close, I realized that I was not ready to lose this wondrous part of my life and my identity. It's only been a week since then, but I know that I will do my best from here on out to hold on to the memories that I still have, and hopefully will have the chance to make new ones too.
And winner of this year's BAAFN Award, Sumin Lee, is a graduate of the Pierce School, currently a senior at the Commonwealth School, headed to Colby College next year, majoring in neuroscience. At school, she is part of the newspaper club and a writer and editor of the literary magazine Helicon, and she is part of the AAPI Youth Council, affiliated with the Massachusetts Commission on Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. Sumin has thought about and written about her identity and experiences as an Asian American before, and really tried to let her creative side show in this essay. She would like to dedicate this award to her parents, who came to this country knowing only a little bit of English and did everything they could to build a good life for Sumin and her 2 sisters. So please welcome Sumin Lee.
Hi, thank you so much for that lovely introduction. So, as you can see, my essay is titled Rice Cake. Whenever my father would bring home a bag of sweet rice from H Mart, I would run around the apartment, striking up a chant. Daddy's making dok, Daddy's making dok. Dok, Korean rice cake, was one of my favorite snacks. My father would usually get it from the store, but occasionally he would make it himself. I would try to help him out in any way I could as a 7-year-old, fetching our mortar and pestle, sometimes even getting to grind a tiny bit of rice. I remember the hearty smell filling my nose and my body as the rice mush swelled into sticky fullness in the oven. The cheery silence that settled over the kitchen as my sisters and I helped my father clean up. The sweetness that flooded my mouth as I took my first bite was warm and filling and tasted like home. In middle school, home was no longer my family's homemade dok, but was instead peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and hangouts at my friend's house. I fueled my body with pasta and sandwiches and Starbucks vanilla bean frappuccinos, laughing with my friends at the sesame crackers and kimchi that my parents stocked in our cabinets. The memories of homemade dok were overwhelmed by the tempting taste of American childhood. My mother encouraged me to try reading the stack of Korean picture books in the living room. "What if you can't read Hangul anymore?" she asked. I said nothing because how would "good, I don't want to be Korean" have sounded against such an eager plea. Whenever I walked by those picture books, I felt some kind of longing. I knew that a part of me was fading away like the colors on those dusty covers, but I walked past them anyway. I always laughed whenever my name was butchered, but I wanted to hide every time a well-meaning substitute teacher called my name for attendance, voice wavering with uncertainty, or when a busy Starbucks barista opened their mouth, shut it, and placed my cup on the counter without even trying. At a certain point, I had had enough. Whenever I was asked for my name at coffee shops or stores, I answered without hesitation, Rose. Now, I thought, I am the perfect American girl. Home for a 16-year-old is much different than home for a 12-year-old. Home was no longer cheap sandwiches and fake laughter, but the embrace of a boy. A nice white boy, someone who got me despite the color of his skin and his dinners at the Harvard Club upbringing. I had just gotten over my fear of speaking Korean in public, after all, and dating someone who paid even the slightest bit of attention to my culture was new and exciting. He loved to cook and eagerly asked me about seaweed soup, the Korean birthday soup. And he told me that he would love to have dinner with me and my family and get a taste of authentic Korean food. He tried kimchi, and even though he didn't like it, wanted to try more of my favorite dishes. Food, an integral part of every culture, was the way to my heart. I was 7 again, running up and down the hall as my father brought in the sweet rice. I don't have to hide my language, my food, my identity. This was home. So when he told me that Asians were not people of color, no matter how many sources I gave him, I told myself that he just did not know any better. When he laughed with his friends about my liberal Instagram stories, where I shared posts about anti-Asian violence, I told myself that he was entitled to his own opinions. I was proud to be Korean, but really just a certain type of Korean. Someone cute, someone small, someone who taught their white boyfriend little phrases that he would never remember. So, was this really home? I no longer run around the hall chanting "Daddy's making dok," but I still get excited when my mom makes black bean noodles and spicy rice cake. I still can't read Korean, but I write stories and poems about someone like me, finding herself in a world that forces one or the other. Dok is still one of my favorite snacks, but I still also do love a good peanut butter and jelly sandwich. For years, I grappled with an impossible question. Was I Asian or American? Now, as I stand on the hyphen of Asian American, balancing my two identities, I realize that I don't have to answer the question at all. I can find home in both of them. Thank you.
You always make me cry. A heartfelt celebratory congratulations to all of our essayists, Lila, Tina, John, Kalina, Sumin. Thank you for your courage and for sharing your truth with us. We always learn from you. My name is Alicia Hsu, and I am a steering committee member of BAAFN, Brookline Asian American Family Network. And it is an honor today to introduce to you our keynote speaker, Grace Talasan. Grace Talasan is the author of The Body Papers, which won the Restless Books Prize for New Immigrant Writing and the Massachusetts Book Award for Nonfiction. And it was a New York Times Editor's Choice selection. Ms. Talasan also published many fiction and nonfiction essays, book reviews, magazine and newspaper articles. She was born in the Philippines and raised here in New England. She has received support as a U.S. Artist Fellow, as a National Endowment for the Arts Creative Writing Fellow, and as a Brother Thomas Fellow. She graduated with degrees in English from Tufts University and UC Irvine, taught creative writing at Brandeis University as the Fannie Hurst Writer in Residence, and teaches in the nonfiction writing program at Brown University. Upon receiving the NEA Fellowship, Grace Talasan wrote, "This prestigious award gives me hope that I can write the books that I've always dreamed of putting into the world. As a writer, I feel welcomed as if I belong." Thank you, Grace Talasan, for being here today to encourage, welcome, give hope to our young writers and to all of us.
Good afternoon. Alicia, thank you for that thoughtful introduction. Thank you, Shulan Chang, for your extraordinary vision that began the journey that brings us all here together today to celebrate Brookline's Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Day. I appreciate all the effort and resources and people and sponsors who came together to make this special day happen. It is my honor to be with fellow speakers and special guests and everyone in this beautiful historic theater to recognize and make visible our presence as a community. As Asian Americans, we have ties in various countries of origin, languages, cultural backgrounds, ethnicities, religious and spiritual traditions, and identities. If we think about our histories and origin stories, about how and why we are here, perhaps the histories of our families are intertwined with immigration policies, such as the 1882 Chinese Exclusion Act, or the 1965 Immigration and Nationality Act, or perhaps wars in the US military presence in Asia, or because of agricultural or economic opportunities, or the American dream, or even something as simple and profound as falling in love. If you look around this space, you can see that we are not homogeneous, but rather heterogeneous. And one might ask, we have so many differences, what could we possibly have in common? What does being Asian American mean when our stories can be so different? Recently, I was asked about how I felt about being Asian American. Ever since I learned that one could be Asian American, I've embraced this identity wholeheartedly. See, I did not grow up in a town like Brookline, where the Asian American population is nearly 20%. For most of my childhood in a small New England town, I felt strange and foreign. I did not see myself reflected in books, TV, movies, or the school curriculum. I was an Oriental. I learned that I was an Oriental, from the almost 100% white community that I lived in. The word did not feel neutral to me. It wasn't as sharp as ethnic slurs for Asians, which I also heard from fellow school children and other people, but Oriental did not feel good. It started with the same letter, O, as another word, other, which is what that word reminded me of constantly. You are not a part of us. You do not belong. You are other, Oriental. The term Asian American was coined by activists Yuji Ichioka and Emma G. in 1968 and came out of cross-racial and ethnic solidarity movements in the 1960s. This newly created identity was a way to unite us to fight for our collective liberation. So I appreciate the term Asian American very much. I am glad to be part of this community and inside of the term that Asian American describes. I feel held and included and as if I belong. I'm showing you this picture. I came to this country from the Philippines when I was 2 years old with my parents and older sister. We moved here after about a year in Chicago to Boston. My parents had jobs at Tufts Medical School. And this is one of the first photos that we took in Boston, which is in front of the John Harvard statue in Harvard Yard in Cambridge. Perhaps you might have a photo like this at home, standing in front of this very statue. I've met other Asian American families who also have their children in front of this very statue. So my parents had heard about Harvard all the way the other side of the world in the Philippines, and it was a stand-in for the pinnacle of educational success. And even though I didn't go to Harvard, I went to college at Tufts, which was actually a better fit for me, and Tufts has continued to play a very important role in my life from then on. To me, I wanted to show this picture because it was this picture about hope and this very beginning of our lives in this country. I wanted to show a couple of other photos in kind of the way that Vincent showed photos about his family life and origin. And so here are some photos of us in Mattapan. And there's a lot of pictures of us with the seasons. We came from a tropical island nation of the Philippines, and so the weather alone and paying attention to the changing of the leaves, the snow falling, things that I've taken for granted living in this country for decades now, this is what my family as early immigrants appreciated and found magical. It was special enough that this is what they wanted to take pictures of and show to their loved ones back home. I'm going to show you a different picture. Go forward a little bit. This is a picture that was taken in 1909 at Symphony Hall, also here in Boston. I thought that my family was the first in our line to come to Boston, and that's not true at all. My great-grandfather came here, a good 100 years or so before I did, and he played at Symphony Hall with the Philippine Constabulary Band as a flutist, and so he stood on this stage not far from here, well before we got here, and my connection to Boston has been really strong since then. There's a photo here of me at 6 years old, and this is taken down the street at at the park in Brookline, just down the road. I wanted to say a little bit about my life specifically as a writer and growing up as a writer. So I wanted to do this as a kind of congratulations to the essay winners and as a way to offer some encouragement, to tell you this story about me becoming a writer. I was really moved by all of your essays. I was lucky to read them in advance and equally lucky to hear you read them today. So this is me in Boston at about 3 years old, writing. I didn't know language at that time, but my father thought to take a picture of me and capture me at that moment, and it really moved me to think of him stopping what he was doing and to take this photo. My parents nurtured and supported my love of stories and books and read picture books to me at bedtime, bought me books when they were able to, and also took me to the public library regularly, where I spent a lot of my childhood and developed my lifelong relationship with reading and writing, thanks to the generosity of my parents bringing me there, but also to the generosity of the public library and the funders in the town and the people that made that place possible. In the Philippines, my parents did not grow up with free public libraries. There were private libraries. As a boy, my father rented Archie comic books to read. He had to pay to read them for pesos on the hour, which meant that my father learned to read very quickly. And so when they first got to this country, my parents were amazed by all that we had access to. We had swimming lessons, we would go ice skating and sledding and go to these beautiful public parks thanks to the DCR, Department of Conservation and Recreation, and we spent hours at playgrounds all over the city. It did not matter that we were newcomers. We were welcome at these public places, and we used these services, and it improved our lives and connected us to our new home. When I was in college, I was an English major. I took a lot of creative writing classes, and I would go to events where I would hear writers speak, and I could never imagine myself actually being the person speaking. So even though I love to write and love to read, I just couldn't make that leap and imagine myself doing this kind of thing, writing books, speaking about them. I was really shy. and never one to raise my hand in class or offer anything that I had to say. I would have things that I was burning to say, questions that I really wanted to ask, but as someone who would be the only person of color oftentimes in a room, I was too shy and intimidated to speak. I would challenge myself and be like, all right, you have to do this. You have to speak in class and raise your hand. And so I would rehearse things in my head to offer in class. But of course, by the time I raised my hand and it was ready to speak, the moment had passed and it was too far gone, I wasn't able to get much practice in speaking. And it's something that, for me, as someone who teaches, I really try to make opportunities for people to practice. Not everybody has been encouraged to speak at the dinner table and offer their opinions and to have lots of things to share and say. The fact that I've become a teacher is still kind of a surprise to me. I fell in love with this work when I was in graduate school because I had to. If you had asked me if I wanted to be a teacher, I would say no. I was, way too shy to do that. But in order to pay for graduate school, I was a teacher. I was a TA. The adults that I grew up with were all physicians, and so I didn't know that one could be anything but a doctor. And it took me doing internships in hospitals and almost fainting and not doing that well in my pre-med classes all the way through college that I had to kind of point my attention in another direction and think about, well, just because there's not a career ladder and an easy way to know how to become a writer, there was steps laid out for me in terms of becoming a doctor. I knew generally, even though it was a very difficult thing to do, I knew the steps and the pathway to do that. I did not know what it meant to be a writer and how one would do that. But at the end of college, I decided to take a risk. And I asked my parents to come meet me at school, and I said I had big news to tell them. I think they were nervous. They had to come through, they live south of Boston, so they went through Boston traffic at rush hour to meet me north of Boston, where Tufts is at. And so they made their way there, and they were kind of out of breath and really stressed out. And they were like, what? What do you have to tell us? What is your news? And I said, I want to be a writer. I don't want to be a doctor anymore. And they were like, yeah, that's fine. Why did you call us and make us drive through traffic to tell us that? And so, I've talked with students and they've had this idea, this story in their head about what it is they're supposed to be and who their parents want them to become and what's acceptable. Often these are related to professions that have pathways, like being a physician or a lawyer or an engineer. And I'm not saying that being a writer is easy and that I even know what to tell you about how to become a writer. But I don't think that our work that we do and that we're passionate about and that we love as a vocation needs to be the thing that makes us money. I think that, at least in my experience, it's had to be separated. And I've had to find the time and the ways to continue building my skills as a writer, despite not doing that and earning my income with it. And so to think about that and to think about having things that you do that actually has nothing to do with money and that could be separated from that. And so for me, at least, I held with being a writer for a really long time. I had a lot of shame about my failures. It took me 20 years from graduating grad school to publishing a first book. I had a very small class in grad school. 6 people were in my class, and they published books pretty quickly after they graduated, even had movies made of their books. And there was me, another year, another 10 years, then another 10 years, and I hadn't published a book yet. But I kept at it, and I really believed in what I was doing. And even though I heard a lot of no from publishers and other places, I thought of why I was writing. And again, it had nothing to do with awards or money, and everything to do with being visible and telling a true story. And I thought about who I was writing for and why I wanted to write this. And I've been lucky to have success. A few years ago during the pandemic, one of the things I wrote was chosen for Boston Book Festival as One City, One Story. And I'm showing you this because I had seen these given away every October for that 10 years that I was failing as a writer, and took my free copy of it. And I could never imagine this, that I would have my own. And I think that, even if there's ways that we can't imagine where we're going to go or what is possible, that we should still try and to keep at it. Because sometimes, I was really lucky to have friends and other people who could see the vision that I couldn't. And I was lucky a few months ago, my book had won, the Body Papers had won the Massachusetts Book Award. And I think it's a weird thing to show a picture of myself at a podium while I'm at a podium. I apologize, but it was a really big moment for me and my family. There's my parents, that I could be at the State House accepting an award for something that I had written. And so even if we can't see where we're going and it takes a really long time and we feel like we're making a lot of sacrifices to get there, I encourage you to keep going and to believe in yourself and to find a way to tell your story and to write your truth. Thank you.
Grace, thank you very much. Grace, thank you very much. I'm so happy to have been able to spend if you add it up, maybe 2 hours with you on the phone. One of the things that really struck me was one thing was the fact that Grace absolutely remembers every single detail. I'm at an age where I'm beginning to forget, and Grace remembers everything. And also, she wears her name so well, because behind the computer screen on the other side, you can just feel this almost like a female Buddha feeling, of calm and poise. I almost feel like talking to my own mother, whom I miss very much. So Grace is going to be, right after this event, at the Brookline Booksmith, and her books are available, the body paper is available, so please, I encourage you to go across the street and have her sign however many copies that you would like. Now, I don't even know whether I should be introducing this phenomenon. Karen Tran, after this event, you might think that all I do is sit behind the computer and read newspapers, because Karen Tran I met, she was on Boston Globe one morning. And I thought, wow, she is so amazingly cool, so straightforward about the tough parts, tough things in life that she had to go through. But at the same time, in my naivete, I identified so much with what she is trying to do. And she is simply trying to spread joy. All right. Karen is 27. She is half Vietnamese, half Chinese. Sorry, am I supposed to, was it okay that I said your age? Okay. All right. So I'm not going to go further. We have a big surprise that comes with Karen. The only thing I ask you is to, when we reveal the surprise, that you practice some self-control. Okay? That's my advice. Karen, please.
That is so funny. Like, everyone chill. Nice to meet you. I'm Karen. So, I have literally the cutest PowerPoint I could possibly come up with for you guys. So the question that we have asked ourselves the whole day, what is it like to be Asian American? Like, what does it mean for you? And personally, when people ask me this question, I think they also have to ask me, what is being bipolar like? What is being a woman like? Because it's all put together in one really, really convoluted, painfully human ball, right? So personally for me, one of the most beautiful and long-lasting gifts my parents have ever given me is my culture. And, you know, dim sum literally means to touch the heart, and that's what it all comes down to, right? And personally, bringing someone to dim sum for the first time, watching them eat a nai wang bao, and their face is like they just saw God, truly impeccable. So with that, I find that speaking in Cantonese with my parents and them speaking English to me is kind of like a painful process, because both of us are not fully capable of being ourselves with other languages. So the eternal struggle for me and my family is that I will never be fully Chinese and they will never be fully American. So this project, which I will start telling you about in a second, it started from depression. It started from a really, really hard place. I had three just bad things happen to me at the same time. So first, I was in sales. Just so you know, I suck at sales. I'm very bad at it. And every week, my manager would sit me down and say, "You're doing a bad job." And I'm like, that's not helping. So after that, I was very stressed out about almost getting fired every week. And then my grandpa died, obviously very stressful, but the worst part specifically for me is that I hadn't seen my extended family in a couple years, and I gained like 60 pounds and also tattooed a fourth of my body. So, you know, as Asians, you know, that's not really, anyways. So that was the second thing. And the third thing was that a woman that I had only known for 3 months had died. So I lived in Vietnam with my aunt, and while I was there, her mother-in-law, like their grandma, basically treated me like I was her own grandkid, and that was so healing for me in so many ways. And she was very much so an Asian grandma, you know, like hard on the outside and ooey gooey on the inside. And I loved her so much. Every morning I would wake up and I'd be like, "Ah, Pa," which just means like grandma in Cantonese. And she's like, "Why do you say my name every day like you're gonna forget it?" So she was so sweet. And that whole time, I was so shocked because I realized, like, you can have an Asian family and not be toxic. Shocking. I was like, that's nuts. So anyways, after that, I always planned to go back and see her the next time I went to Vietnam. And last year, during this time period, I got a text from my cousin, and I was at work, and she's like, "Grandma died," and my face is like wet, and I'm like, "Oh, I'm crying. Like, I'm really upset about this." So it was just a really tough time period because I never got to tell her how much I loved her, or how much of like a real grandmother she was to me, and in a way that I had always wanted. So just bad, okay? Very bad. Not a good time. So I spiraled, right? Bipolar disorder is very temperamental, you could say. And when a lot of people ask me what bipolar disorder is like, it's kind of hard for people to understand, but the way I explain it is, if you think of your whole life, you know, as like one like singular thing, usually there are bad things that happen and good things that happen, and they kind of balance each other out. But with bipolar disorder, it kind of just picks up every terrible thing that has ever happened to you and like shows it like a movie in your face, and they're like, "This is your life." And it totally just distorts the perspective of your whole life. And so you don't know that it's happening. And let's say you're manic, so it'll pick all the happy parts. You will feel like you have never felt the other opposite thing in your whole life. So that's probably the easiest way I could describe it to you. So during this time period, I'm like focused on like every terrible thing that has ever happened to me. And usually when I was younger, I would like kind of turn into myself and start doing like bad things. And I was like, no, it's time to put on my big girl pants. I'm gonna do something productive. So I am an artist, you know, I'm a sculptor. I was kind of tired of using clay because I did it as a job. I didn't want to do it anymore. And I only had like positive associations with needle felting. So it's a very niche hobby, okay? So I started needle felting and I'm making like all of these tiny animals, okay? Like tons of them. And at this point in time, like I'm starting to call them my depression animals. And my friends are like texting me, they're like, hey, how are you doing? And I show them a small army of like cows and pigs. I'm like, does this answer your question? And they're like, oh my God, you're doing terribly. And I'm like, you're absolutely right. So during this, I'm like making like way too many animals. So I'm like, I don't know what to do with these. So I'm starting to think, I'm like, okay, like what can I do with them? I could sell them, but I would only sell them for cheap. And I hate going to the post office. I'm like, no, that's not happening. And then I'm like, okay, what if I hide them outside? We live in Massachusetts and no one leaves the house like after October 1st. I'm like, okay. So then I'm like, all right, great. I'm gonna hide them and I don't know where. And I'm like, you know who doesn't need my help? Target. I'm like, you're gonna go there to sniff candles regardless. Like, they don't need me sending you over there to find little animals. So I started thinking, like, why don't I just show people and kind of like this blossoming community that we have in Boston. I'm gonna find these like small local businesses, hide the animals in them, and hopefully I will have this like point in time where people are starting to like think Boston's cool, right? Like that's the exciting part. So anyways, the whole point, I make the little animals, I hide them for free in small local businesses, we all win. So the heart of this project is joy, but joy is very, very complicated because a lot of the times it will come from pain, the pain of knowing what it's like to be in the absence of joy. So I took what was one of the most difficult months in my life and I made something beautiful out of it. But the beauty I had created from it comes straight from my identity as a bipolar Asian American woman. So I've read your essays, and I was so touched of what you all have written, especially about how you balance on the hyphen of Asian American, of how we're all bound by our brokenness, and how joy is an act of resistance. So, you guys ready for the special surprise? Today, I have hidden 6 tiny animals that I've specifically made for this event. They are all animals that they have great significance in Asian culture, and I hope whichever animal you find, you'll take their symbolic meaning with you into the next year with you. So I'm gonna show them on screen. Obviously, I have to flex my work, right? So, giant panda, wow, it's so little. So it symbolizes gentleness, prosperity, and harmony. Next, elephants, oh my God. So they symbolize strength, wisdom, and power. Hachiko, the white Akita. So I don't know if you guys have heard of this dog, but basically this dog had an owner that obviously he loved so dearly, and he would walk to the train station every day to go pick up, this is kind of backwards, but he's picking up his owner. And anyways, his owner died tragically, very sad, and he returned every day to Shibuya Station to wait for his owner. And look how sad he looks. So obviously I had to do the matching ears and make the extremely sad dog face. But this dog symbolizes loyalty in Japanese culture. Next, we have a tiger, and it symbolizes courage, passion, and protection. Check out the cheeks, very chubby. Lions symbolize fearlessness, leadership, and intelligence, and monkeys symbolize playfulness, curiosity, and versatility. Look under your seats. You can find me at Tiny Felt a Joy on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. I have my email up here too, as well as my website if you want to take a picture. But yeah, if you want to wait till after, I will literally tell you the exact location of every single one. So you're gonna have to fight for that. Okay, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. You can all leave, and then I'll stay and I'll go look underneath every single chair because I really want that little hachiko. Now, the clock is ticking, and we have to vacate very soon. However, there's one very, very important thing I would like to do, and it is to say thank you. Thank you to the sponsors. Thank you to all our volunteers. Thank you to the librarians and teachers that have been amazing over the last 10 months, being so enthusiastic. Thank you to all the town meeting members that voted unanimously yes to make May AAPI Heritage Month. Thank you so, so much. Thank you to Heyoung Ko. Where are you, Heyoung? Thank you to Caitlin Starr. Thank you to Linda Louie. Thank you to Alicia Shu. We had many volunteers, but these 4 ladies are the powerhouses. Wait a minute, one more. Susan Park, where are you? Are you still here? She just left. Okay. Thank you very, very. Oh. Now, but there are 2 organizations that we really, really owe a huge amount to over the last 10 months. Us, BAAFN, owes for the last 10 months. However, the whole community owes for more than half a century. I'd like to invite our treasurer of the state of Massachusetts, Deb Goldberg, to come forward and introduce 2 special gifts.
So before I do that, I've been very, very moved by today, and particularly so because I have been very, very fortunate. Hey, Giles, I haven't seen you in so long. Sorry. I love Giles. And in fact, Giles knows probably what I'm going to talk about a little bit. Of course, having grown up in Brookline, I was lucky from a personal level of being very exposed to and engaged with because of the way I was brought up with members of the Asian community. And it's due to the way that I was brought up that I embraced in my political roles through the years, not only an openness, but a passion to be welcoming, inclusive, and break down barriers for people all across our town and our state. I was very lucky when I ran for lieutenant governor in 2006 that Grace Lee, who is sitting here in the front row, developed a political action committee in order to bring together Asian political activists to support candidates, and they chose me. I didn't win at the time, but they were willing to take the hit on it. And Grace, in fact, became the general counsel and first deputy of the Massachusetts State Treasurer's Office and made sure that the Asian American Commission was developed, instituted, and begun in the State Treasurer's Office at that time. So I want a round of applause for Grace Lee. So, fast forward to 2014, and lo and behold, the Treasurer's Office was available again. In fact, I am the second longest person in this role in the history of the Commonwealth because it seems that 4 of them in a row decided to run for governor. But thank goodness, because I love what I do, and I'm planning on trying to beat Bob Crane's record of 26 years. And so the Asian American Commission became the Asian American Pacific Islander Commission, is extremely active, and make sure that I stay up to date and educated on everything that I need to know. Only Grace told me I didn't need to know it, because when I got elected, it was with intention that we opened our doors to everyone who was qualified. And so my general counsel became Sarah Kim. My head of HR, and by the way, they're all still there today because we love what we do together, Sui Lin Wang. And 16% of the employees in the treasurer's office are from the Asian American community. Giles has had me visit lots of people, right, Giles? And has been an enormous supporter of mine, and we've worked on a lot of things together. So when Shu asked me what I was doing today, and she asked me 3 months ago, I put it right on my calendar. Here we are in my hometown. Here we are with old friends. And I am so impressed with these young women who have blown me away. And I like wearing red too, by the way. And so I want to congratulate all of you on a tremendous occasion. And particularly thank you, Shu, because from the passion and from the bottom of your heart, you have dedicated yourself and made this happen today. So thank you. Now, I know all the background stories on these, and I promised to bring them today. And as I said, whatever Shu asks, Shu gets. So, the first citation, please, Brookline Booksmith. Folks, come on up. Where are you? Now, do I dare tell you that before you were there, and going back to Brookline High School, 1967-68, there was a little coffee shop inside. I hung out there every day when I wasn't at Pewter Pot or Howard Johnson's. So I just said, that's how far back I go with you. But I want to read the citation. Be it hereby known to all that the Massachusetts Treasurer and Receiver General hereby offers her sincerest, meaning my sincerest, congratulations to the Brookline Booksmith in recognition of 60 years of incredible devotion and generosity toward the people of Brookline. The treasurer extends her very best wishes, and that would be me, and expresses her hope, which is mine, for future good fortune and continued success in all endeavors.
Thank you so much.
And just so you know, Debbie Rose, who was taking the pictures, well, Deb Rose and Deb Goldberg used to be Debbie and Debbie and sat next to each other in many Brookline High School classes. So let me give this to you to keep it dry. And a pewter pot, chocolate chip muffins. Now, the Coolidge Corner Theater. Come on up. So, I have a story for you too, of course. Glenn Sussman in 6th grade, tried to hold my hand in that row right over there, and I had to tell my father on him. But he did buy me a ID bracelet with his name on it, which I did wear for a short period of time, and I got my first kitten from him when his cat had kittens. So this is my attachment to the theater, besides all the wonderful things that you do for the community. We're very fortunate here in Brookline. The Booksmith across the street, the theater here, and all the people in our community. Be it hereby known to all, again, that the Massachusetts Treasurer and Receiver General hereby offers her sincerest congratulations to the Coolidge Corner Theater in recognition of 90 years, I'm not 90 yet, so I wasn't here at the beginning, of inspiring film experiences and generosity to the people of Brookline. The treasurer extends her very best wishes and expresses her hope for future good fortune and continued success in all endeavors. And I thank you personally. Oh, let me give you your envelope. And all set. Thank you, everyone, for including me in this very important day. Sure. Go on, Sue. Over here. Over here.
Thank you, Deb. And thank you so much, Peter. I am so proud because I think I'm the only customer at the Brookline Booksmith that ever succeeded in convincing Peter to pose for a photograph for me. I have it in my iPhone if anybody needs anything for their publicity material. I have the photographs. Peter, thank you so much for being such an asset in the purchase of all these books that we provided to the Brookline schools. Thank you. We couldn't have done it. It's unbelievable that in the space of 10 months, for everything that we ordered, it all ended up in, we were able to do it with maybe about 20 emails. That's their efficiency and their streamlining. And Kathy, thank you to your staff, amazing staff, Blair, Tom, Beth Gilligan, everybody else that are behind, in the darkness over there, helping us to run this very amateur celebration. Thank you so much for giving us the opportunity so graciously to be able to do something in this historic theater. Our privilege, thank you. Thank you very much. So, we'll see you next year, right? Please go across the street and meet with Grace Talusan, her book, The Body Papers, at the Brookline Booksmith. Maybe Grace would like to walk across with Peter, because Grace has been really looking forward to meeting you. Thank you very much for everything and for being with us today. Sorry it lasted a little bit too long, but I really hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.